Sarah owned a home for rescued bears. Her rich neighbor wanted to steal her land to build a golf course. The neighbor made fake videos and lied to everyone. Sarah had to fight in court to save her bear's home. Would she win against someone with lots of money? Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. My name is Sarah Martinez, and I never thought I'd be fighting a legal war over my own backyard. But that's exactly what happened when the Pinewood Hills Homeowners Association decided they wanted my family's 200-acre wildlife sanctuary for their ambitious new golf course expansion project. The story I'm about to tell you changed everything I thought I knew about my peaceful neighborhood and taught me that sometimes you have to fight dishonest people with nothing but clean truth and solid evidence. I inherited this beautiful land from my grandfather 5 years ago when he passed away at 84. He started the Grizzly Bear Sanctuary back in 1985 after rescuing 2 orphan cubs from a devastating logging accident in the nearby Cascade Mountains. The cubs were barely 3 months old, tiny balls of brown fur that wouldn't have survived another day alone in the wilderness. My grandfather spent his entire life savings converting our old family cattle ranch into a proper wildlife sanctuary with secure enclosures, veterinary facilities, and natural habitat areas. Today we care for 12 magnificent grizzly bears, all legally permitted and registered with both the state wildlife department and federal authorities. Every single bear has a heartbreaking story that eventually led them to our sanctuary. Kodiak, our largest male at 900 pounds, came from a traveling circus that went bankrupt in Nevada. He had spent 15 miserable years performing stupid tricks for crowds, living in a cage barely twice his body size. When we rescued him, he didn't even know how to be a bear anymore. He would pace in perfect circles for hours, repeating the same routine he'd been forced to do for tourist entertainment. Luna was hit by a massive logging truck when she was just 6 months old. The truck driver, horrified by what had happened, brought her to us with a shattered leg and severe head trauma. Our veterinarian said she'd never survive the night, but Luna proved everyone wrong with her incredible fighting spirit. She walks with a noticeable limp now, but she's become the smartest and most curious bear in our sanctuary. Bear, ironically named by the park ranger who found him, was abandoned by his mother during a terrible drought year when food was desperately scarce throughout the region. The ranger discovered him crying pitifully next to his dead sibling, nothing but skin and bones and barely breathing. Smokey came to us from a horrible roadside zoo in rural Texas where tourists paid $20 to take selfie photos with him. When animal control authorities finally shut down that facility for severe cruelty violations, Smokey was so malnourished that his fur had fallen out in ugly patches all over his body. Thunder and Lightning are biological brothers who survived a massive forest fire that tragically killed their mother and destroyed thousands of acres. Maya was kept as an illegal pet by a drug dealer until federal agents raided his compound. She still flinches nervously whenever people move too quickly around her enclosure. Our sanctuary sits peacefully on the edge of Pinewood Hills, an increasingly expensive suburban neighborhood that has grown dramatically around us over the past 20 years. When my grandfather first established the sanctuary, there were only a few scattered farmhouses and thousands of acres of pristine forest stretching in every direction. As the city expanded outward, real estate developers built bigger and more luxurious homes, but most of our neighbors genuinely respected our conservation work. Many even donated money regularly or volunteered their time to help with daily feeding schedules and facility maintenance. Local children from the neighborhood would bicycle past our perimeter fence hoping to catch an exciting glimpse of the bears during their afternoon nap time. Elementary schools throughout the district brought entire classes for educational field trips where students learned about wildlife conservation and habitat preservation. We had built positive relationships with the community over decades of responsible operation and had never experienced any serious problems with our neighbors until Margaret Whitfield entered the picture. The HOA board had completely different ideas about our land use, however. They saw 200 acres of prime real estate sitting unused, and absolutely perfect for their ambitious development dreams and profit schemes. Our property was worth millions of dollars, especially the scenic section along Miller Creek that meandered through the heart of our sanctuary. Margaret Whitfield, who had been elected HOA president just 3 years earlier, made it crystal clear from our very first official meeting that she wanted us gone permanently. Margaret lived in the biggest house on the entire hill, a massive 6,000-square-foot mansion complete with a circular marble driveway and imported stone columns. She drove a brand new white BMW SUV and always wore expensive diamond jewelry that sparkled and caught the light whenever she gestured dramatically during conversations. Her husband Richard owned 3 successful car dealerships throughout the state plus a large construction company that specialized in luxury developments. They possessed the kind of serious money and political connections that made people listen carefully when they spoke. At our first face-to-face meeting in the community center, Margaret smiled sweetly and said in her most patronizing voice, "Sarah dear, wouldn't you rather accept a generous financial offer and move somewhere more appropriate for those dangerous wild animals? Perhaps somewhere far away from our beautiful family neighborhood?" The way she pronounced the word, animals, made it sound like she was discussing diseased rats or poisonous snakes rather than magnificent wildlife. I politely but firmly declined her offer, patiently explaining that relocating adult grizzly bears would cause them severe psychological trauma and potentially kill them. Many of our bears had serious medical conditions requiring specialized veterinary care that wasn't available at other facilities. This land was their permanent forever home, and my grandfather had legally established the sanctuary as an irrevocable conservation trust specifically designed to prevent any future development or commercial use. These incredible bears represented my family's legacy and life work. The moment I finished speaking, Margaret's fake sweet smile completely disappeared and her true personality emerged. Her eyes turned cold and calculating. That's when I realized this polite conversation was actually a declaration of war, and things were about to get very ugly very quickly for me and my bears. The harassment campaign began with seemingly innocent incidents that appeared almost accidental to outside observers. Local joggers would accidentally run through our clearly marked private trails, claiming they somehow didn't see the numerous private property and wildlife sanctuary signs posted every 50 feet along our boundaries. Teenagers would climb over our 8-foot security fences to take dangerous selfie photos with the bears, completely ignoring the multiple warnings about potentially deadly wildlife encounters. Each time someone trespassed, I would politely but firmly explain the serious dangers to both humans and animals, respectfully asking them to stay off our property for everyone's safety. Most people apologized sincerely and left immediately, but some became hostile and argumentative, insisting that our land should be public property anyway since it was just sitting there doing nothing important. The problems escalated dramatically over several months. I installed a comprehensive security camera system throughout the property after repeatedly finding beer bottles, fast food containers, and cigarette butts scattered near the sensitive bear enclosures. The high-definition footage revealed groups of teenagers having loud late-night parties on our land, sometimes positioning themselves just 50 feet away from the grizzly habitat areas. They would bring powerful boom boxes, set off illegal fireworks, and leave mountains of trash scattered everywhere when they finally left. One particularly disturbing incident occurred on a Saturday night when I caught an obviously drunk college student trying to feed pizza slices to Kodiak through the reinforced fence while his equally intoxicated friends recorded videos for their social media accounts. The young man was actually reaching his hand through the chain link, just inches from 900 pounds of wild predator. If Kodiak had grabbed him, the student would have lost his arm or possibly his life. I called the local police department after every single trespassing incident, carefully documenting each violation with detailed photographs and clear video evidence showing faces, license plates, and property damage. Unfortunately, Officer Jenkins, who responded to most of our calls, would only issue verbal warnings to the trespassers regardless of the severity of their actions. "Boys will be boys," he would say with a dismissive shrug. No real harm was done here. When I tried to explain that severely stressed bears could become dangerously aggressive, stop eating entirely, or develop serious health problems, Officer Jenkins would nod politely and suggest that I should put up additional warning signs or build higher fences. He seemed completely unable to understand that the constant harassment was literally threatening my animals' lives and well-being. But there was definitely serious harm being done to my beloved bears. Luna stopped eating completely for 3 entire days after a group of mountain bikers rode aggressively through our property at dawn, shouting profanities and honking loud air horns specifically to wake up the lazy bears for their stupid video project. Thunder suffered what our veterinarian later diagnosed as a severe panic attack when someone detonated powerful firecrackers directly outside his sleeping area, causing him to run blindly into the perimeter fence so hard that he sustained painful bruising along his entire left shoulder. Dr. Patricia Webb, our experienced veterinarian who had been providing expert care for sanctuary animals throughout the region for over 20 years, warned me repeatedly that continued psychological stress could cause the bears to become seriously ill, increasingly aggressive toward humans, or even stop eating entirely until they starved to death. Wild animals, she explained, were not designed to handle constant human harassment and invasion of their territory. That's when I began keeping obsessively detailed records of every incident, no matter how minor it seemed at the time. My comprehensive documentation included the exact date and precise time, current weather conditions, estimated number of people involved, photographs of any property damage or scattered trash, recorded names and descriptions of trespassers when I could identify them, saved copies of all video footage from our security cameras, and detailed written reports from Dr. Webb documenting the bear's stress levels and health impacts following each incident. My close friend Jake Morrison, a retired police detective who had become a private investigator after 30 years of law enforcement experience, helped me organize everything into a systematic filing system that would be admissible in court proceedings. Documentation is absolutely your best friend in situations like this, Jake told me repeatedly during our evening strategy sessions. In legal battles, the person with the most thorough and accurate records usually wins. Keep track of every single thing, no matter how small or insignificant it might seem. I took his professional advice very seriously, creating a comprehensive incident log that included detailed measurements of exactly where trespassers had entered our property, what specific areas they had accessed, any equipment or weapons they had brought, and precise behavioral changes observed in individual bears following each violation. I photographed tire tracks, footprints, and every piece of discarded trash. Dr. Webb helped me establish documented baseline behavioral patterns for each bear so we could scientifically prove any stress-related changes in their eating, sleeping, or social interactions. The absolute breaking point came during Memorial Day weekend when I was in town purchasing specialized medical supplies for the bears' scheduled weekly health examinations. My smartphone started buzzing frantically with alerts from our sophisticated motion sensor security system. First came one alert, then 5, then dozens more. By the time I managed to pull my truck over safely and check the notifications, 37 different motion sensors had triggered simultaneously across our entire property. Something was definitely very wrong. I raced home as fast as safely possible, speeding through the winding mountain roads with my heart pounding with worry and fear. What I discovered when I finally arrived was complete chaos that looked like a full-scale invasion of our peaceful sanctuary. The Pinewood Hills HOA had organized what they were calling a community picnic, directly on my private land without any permission, consultation, or legal authority whatsoever. Over 200 people were spread across our main meadow, which was clearly marked with private property, wildlife sanctuary, and no trespassing signs positioned every 50 feet along the perimeter. They had brought everything necessary for a complete festival celebration. There were multiple inflatable bounce houses for children, a professional DJ with massive speakers blasting music, several barbecue stations smoking ribs and hamburgers, beer vendors serving alcohol, and even a small carnival game area with prizes. Families had spread colorful blankets across the meadow and were having picnics just like it was a public park. Children were running around playing frisbee and soccer. Teenagers were throwing footballs dangerously close to the bear enclosures. It looked like a scene from a Norman Rockwell painting, except it was happening on my bear's home without any consent or legal permission whatsoever. Most shocking of all, someone had used industrial bolt cutters to slice through the heavy security chains protecting our main gate, leaving the destroyed metal links scattered across the gravel driveway. They had posted their own professional signs reading Pinewood Hills Community Event, Welcome, and Family Fun Day, proudly sponsored by Whitfield Development Corporation. Volunteers wearing matching t-shirts were directing parking and handing out printed programs listing scheduled activities. Margaret stood near my house directing traffic and giving orders like she was the rightful owner of the entire property. When she spotted me climbing out of my truck, she actually waved cheerfully and called out, "Sarah, how wonderful that you could make it to our little neighborhood gathering. Isn't this just perfect?" My hands were literally shaking with rage and disbelief. "This is private property," I managed to say, trying to keep my voice under control. "You and everyone else need to leave immediately before someone gets seriously hurt." Margaret laughed dismissively and shook her head like I was a confused child. "Oh dear, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding here. Our legal research clearly shows that the county records list this as designated community land available for neighborhood use. Perhaps you should check with your lawyer before making such dramatic accusations." I knew she was lying completely, but with over 200 witnesses watching our confrontation, I couldn't afford to lose my temper or make any kind of scene that could be used against me later. I immediately called the police emergency line, but the dispatcher said they would send an officer, when one becomes available, since this was apparently considered a low-priority civil matter rather than an active crime scene. Then absolute disaster struck without any warning. A group of teenagers had wandered away from the main picnic area and were now gathered around Kodiak's enclosure, obviously drawn by his massive size and impressive presence. They were shouting to get his attention and throwing pieces of their lunch through the fence, trying to make him come closer for better video footage. Kodiak, already severely stressed by the loud music and crowd of strangers invading his territory, began displaying clear warning behaviors that I recognized immediately, pacing rapidly back and forth, huffing loudly, and standing periodically on his hind legs to assess the threat level. "Everyone needs to move away from that fence right now," I shouted desperately, running toward the group as fast as possible. "That is an extremely dangerous wild animal." But my warning came too late to prevent catastrophe. One particularly foolish teenage boy had decided to climb directly onto the chain-link fence to get a better camera angle for his social media video. The fence, which was designed to keep bears in rather than support human weight, began bending and creaking ominously under his body weight. Kodiak, seeing the fence barrier moving and potentially failing, stood up to his full height of 9 feet and let out a thunderous warning roar that could probably be heard for several miles in every direction. Pure pandemonium erupted instantly. People screamed in terror and ran frantically in all directions. Children began crying hysterically. Panicked parents grabbed their kids and sprinted toward their cars without looking back. In less than 5 minutes, our meadow was completely empty except for abandoned picnic supplies, scattered trash, and one very stressed and agitated grizzly bear who was still pacing and vocalizing his distress. Miraculously, no one was physically injured during the chaotic evacuation, but the psychological damage was already done and spreading rapidly. By that same evening, social media platforms were flooded with dramatic videos and sensationalized photographs from the incident. Local news headlines screamed, "Dangerous bears threaten community event," and "Wild animals attack innocent families at neighborhood picnic." Within just 1 week of the Memorial Day disaster, Margaret had successfully weaponized the incident for her own purposes. She organized multiple emergency HOA meetings and packed town hall sessions, systematically painting me as a reckless and irresponsible neighbor who was deliberately endangering children and families throughout our community. But Margaret didn't limit herself to simply distorting the truth. She began manufacturing completely fake evidence to support her campaign. Her first fabricated piece of evidence was a leaked phone recording that she played dramatically at a crowded town hall meeting. The audio clip featured my voice clearly saying, "I honestly don't care if someone gets hurt or killed. These bears come first and people can just stay away if they don't like it." The problem was that I had never said those words in my entire life. The recording was obviously edited, with my words cut and pasted together from several different conversations to create a completely false statement. I immediately recognized fragments of legitimate phone calls I'd had with Dr. Webb about proper bear care protocols and safety procedures, but they had been cleverly spliced together and taken completely out of context to make me sound callous and threatening. The editing was sophisticated enough to fool casual listeners, but I knew it was fake because I remembered the actual conversations about protecting both the bears and the public through proper safety measures. Margaret's next attack involved safety violation photographs that she claimed proved I was keeping the bears in substandard and dangerous conditions. She showed pictures of damaged fencing, dirty water bowls, and inadequate shelter areas to support her narrative. But I immediately recognized those specific photographs because they were from 2019, taken before we had completed a major facility upgrade project. She had somehow obtained old photos from the state inspection files and was presenting them as current evidence of neglect. The fake videos were by far the most disturbing part of Margaret's campaign. Someone with serious technical skills had created deepfake footage showing me encouraging visitors to get dangerously close to the bears. In these fabricated videos, I appeared to be saying things like, "Don't worry about it, they're really friendly," and "You can pet them if you want to." The technology wasn't perfect, but it was convincing enough to fool people who didn't know me personally or understand how deepfakes worked. Jake helped me analyze every piece of fake evidence that Margaret was distributing. "This is extremely sophisticated work," he said grimly while examining the metadata from the fraudulent videos. "Whoever created this stuff has serious technical skills and professional equipment. This isn't some amateur operation." The community response was devastating to watch. Neighbors who had supported our sanctuary for decades now crossed the street to avoid talking to me. The local newspaper ran a front-page story titled, "Is Pinewood Hills Safe?" with a large photograph of Kodiak roaring. Parents organized petition drives demanding that the bears be removed from the neighborhood immediately. Most terrifying of all, the state wildlife department launched a formal investigation into our sanctuary operations. They threatened to revoke all our permits and relocate the bears to other facilities if they discovered evidence of serious safety violations or improper animal care. Losing our permits would mean the end of everything my grandfather had built and the destruction of the only home these rescued bears had ever known. I felt exactly like David facing Goliath, but I absolutely refused to surrender without fighting back with everything I had. Jake and I developed a systematic approach to gathering evidence and methodically exposing Margaret's lies. First, we carefully analyzed every single piece of fake evidence that Margaret had produced and distributed throughout the community. Jake contacted a friend who worked at the FBI crime laboratory to analyze the fraudulent audio recording. Their sophisticated analysis revealed clear signs of digital editing, including different audio qualities between segments, mismatched background noise patterns, and impossible voice inflections that proved the recording was artificially constructed. We also located the original phone conversations in my cellular service records, proving that my words had been taken completely out of context. For the fake photographs, I had maintained detailed photo documentation of every facility upgrade we had completed over the years, complete with timestamps, contractor receipts, and before and after comparisons. We were able to prove definitively that Margaret's violation photos were taken before our renovations were finished. I also had current photographs from the state's own recent inspection showing that everything was in excellent condition and exceeded all safety requirements. The deepfake videos were more challenging to disprove, but Jake located Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a digital forensics expert from the State University who specialized in detecting AI-generated content. Dr. Rodriguez analyzed the fake videos frame by frame, discovering telltale signs of digital manipulation, including inconsistent lighting between my face and body, facial features that didn't match my actual bone structure, and audio tracks that weren't properly synchronized with lip movements. Meanwhile, I was gathering evidence of Margaret's real motivations and the conspiracy behind her actions. Through a Freedom of Information Act request, I discovered that Margaret's company, Whitfield Development Corporation, had submitted preliminary architectural plans for a luxury golf course expansion that included the exact boundaries of my property. The planning documents were dated 2 months before the Memorial Day incident, proving this was a premeditated scheme. Jake's investigation revealed that Margaret had been secretly attempting to alter the county land records by filing false documents claiming that my property was actually part of the original Pinewood Hills community development. She had forged my grandfather's signature on a supposed land dedication document allegedly from 1985, trying to create legal justification for seizing our sanctuary. I reached out personally to everyone who had attended the Memorial Day picnic, and many confirmed that they had witnessed Margaret cutting through our security locks and posting fake signs. A catering company employee admitted that Margaret had hired them and specifically told them it was private property, but that she had claimed to have worked everything out with the owner. Dr. Webb provided crucial expert testimony about the bear's stress levels and overall health, with comprehensive medical records proving that our animals were actually healthier and calmer than most captive bears in zoos, despite the recent harassment campaign. Her documentation showed that we provided exceptional care that exceeded all industry standards. Margaret's first legal move was filing a lawsuit claiming that our bears constituted a public nuisance that endangered the community and demanding their immediate removal. She also filed criminal charges against me for reckless endangerment and maintaining a dangerous condition that threatens public safety. But I was completely ready for her attack. My lawyer, David Chin, was a specialist in property rights and environmental law with an excellent track record of defending wildlife facilities. We filed comprehensive countersuits for criminal trespassing, systematic harassment, defamation of character, and fraud. We also reported Margaret to law enforcement for forging legal documents and filing false police reports. The preliminary hearing was packed with people from throughout the community. Margaret had organized an extensive campaign, even chartering buses to bring in supporters carrying "Protect Our Children" signs and wearing matching t-shirts. Local television news cameras were present, having covered the controversial story for weeks leading up to the hearing. Margaret's expensive legal team played the fake audio recording and displayed the doctored photographs, painting me as a reckless and unstable person who cared more about dangerous wild animals than human safety. They presented emotional testimony from parents who claimed their children were traumatized by the incident and could no longer play safely in their own neighborhood. Then it was our turn to present the truth. David methodically destroyed every single piece of fake evidence that Margaret had produced. He played the FBI's professional audio analysis, clearly demonstrating the edited cuts and proving that my words had been taken completely out of context from legitimate conversations about animal care. He displayed the metadata from the fraudulent photographs, proving they were several years old and taken before our facility upgrades. Most dramatically, David showed Dr. Rodriguez's detailed analysis of the deepfake videos, with side-by-side technical comparisons that highlighted the digital manipulation and artificial construction. The courtroom was completely silent as people watched the evidence of Margaret's sophisticated deception campaign. "Your Honor," David said with quiet authority, "this isn't a case about dangerous animals threatening a community. This is a case about a systematic campaign of fraud, harassment, and attempted theft designed to steal my client's property for commercial development." He methodically presented our evidence of Margaret's golf course plans, the forged land documents, and her company's obvious financial interest in acquiring our sanctuary property. The judge appeared increasingly troubled as he reviewed the documentation of Margaret's elaborate scheme. "Ms. Whitfield," the judge said sternly, "are you seriously telling this court that you had absolutely no knowledge of these forged documents that bear your signature? And that you were unaware your development company had filed preliminary plans for this exact property?" Margaret stammered nervously through a confused explanation about independent consultants and unfortunate miscommunications, but her credibility was completely destroyed. Even her own supporters in the courtroom looked shocked and betrayed as they realized how thoroughly they had been manipulated and lied to. The preliminary hearing was just the beginning of Margaret's legal troubles. The district attorney's office launched a comprehensive criminal investigation into her activities and quickly discovered that she had used identical tactics against several other property owners throughout the region, always with the ultimate goal of acquiring valuable land for her development projects. The Federal Bureau of Investigation became involved when they traced the creation of the deepfake videos to a company that Margaret had secretly hired. This company specialized in what they euphemistically called reputation management, but had actually created fraudulent evidence for multiple clients involved in legal disputes. Jake's thorough investigation revealed that Margaret had been planning this elaborate scheme for over 2 years. She had hired private investigators to search for any possible violations or weaknesses in our sanctuary's operations that could be used against us. When they found absolutely nothing legitimate to criticize, she had made the calculated decision to manufacture problems and evidence. The State Wildlife Department, after carefully reviewing all the authentic evidence we had provided, not only cleared our sanctuary of all charges but officially commended our facility as a model operation that other sanctuaries should emulate. Dr. Webb's comprehensive medical records proved that our bears had significantly better health outcomes than most zoo animals across the country. The actual trial took place 6 months later, and by then the media narrative had completely shifted in our favor. Instead of "dangerous woman with killer bears," the newspaper headlines now read "HOA president's elaborate fraud scheme exposed," and "how deepfake technology nearly destroyed a wildlife sanctuary." Margaret's legal team attempted to minimize her personal involvement, claiming she had been misled by consultants and genuinely believed that our property was available for community use. However, the evidence against her was absolutely overwhelming and undeniable. We presented emails clearly showing Margaret personally directing the creation of fake evidence, financial records proving that she had personally paid for the deepfake videos, testimony from the contractor who had forged the land documents specifically on her instructions, and recorded phone calls of her threatening other property owners who opposed her development plans. The community members who had initially supported Margaret's campaign were horrified when they learned the complete truth about how extensively they had been manipulated. Many came forward to publicly apologize and offer their enthusiastic support for our sanctuary's mission. Mrs. Henderson, an elderly neighbor who lived just down the road, provided particularly emotional testimony. She explained that Margaret had threatened to dramatically increase her monthly HOA fees if she didn't actively support the campaign against our sanctuary. "I knew in my heart that Sarah was a good and caring person," she said while wiping away tears. "I'm deeply ashamed that I let that terrible woman intimidate me into turning against someone who was doing such important work." The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before reaching their unanimous verdict. They found Margaret guilty on all charges including fraud, forgery, criminal harassment, and conspiracy to commit theft. She was sentenced to 3 years in state prison and ordered to pay $2.3 million in damages to compensate for our legal expenses, facility improvements, and the emotional distress she had caused. The financial settlement was more than enough to significantly expand our sanctuary and create a proper education center where visitors could safely learn about wildlife conservation. The victory felt almost surreal after many months of constant stress, fear, and uncertainty about our future. The settlement money allowed us to construct appropriate visitor facilities with secure viewing areas where people could observe and learn about the bears without disturbing their daily routines. We hired 3 full-time staff members to help with daily care and educational programs. We also partnered with the state university to develop a comprehensive wildlife education program for students of all ages. The local community, genuinely embarrassed by Margaret's deception and their own role in supporting her lies, rallied enthusiastically to help us rebuild and expand. Volunteers donated hundreds of hours helping with construction projects. Local businesses contributed materials and equipment. The elementary school made our sanctuary an official educational field trip destination, and we began hosting regular visits from scout troops and youth organizations. Dr. Webb carefully monitored all our bears throughout the entire ordeal and was amazed by their psychological resilience. Wild animals are much better at sensing genuine intentions than humans often are, she observed. These bears somehow knew that you were fighting to protect them, and that gave them strength to endure the stress. Kodiak, our largest and most impressive bear, became something of a local celebrity after his dramatic roar during the Memorial Day incident. Children would visit our sanctuary specifically hoping to see him, and he seemed to genuinely enjoy the respectful attention as long as visitors maintained appropriate boundaries and followed safety protocols. The experience taught me invaluable lessons about standing up for what's right, even when the odds seem completely impossible. Documentation truly is everything in legal battles. Without our detailed records of every incident, every threat, and every piece of evidence, we never could have successfully proven our case against Margaret's sophisticated lies. Technology can serve as both a weapon and a shield in modern conflicts. Margaret used deepfake videos and digital manipulation to attack our reputation, but those same technological tools helped us expose her deception through forensic analysis that revealed the artificial nature of her fabricated evidence. Truth has tremendous power, but it doesn't defend itself automatically. You have to fight actively for truth with solid evidence, credible witnesses, and persistent determination. Margaret's lies were initially convincing because she invested significant time, money, and effort into making them appear believable to casual observers. Community support matters enormously in disputes like this. When people finally learned the real story behind Margaret's campaign, they supported what was right and just. However, it required considerable courage for neighbors to admit they had been fooled and stand up publicly against someone as powerful and intimidating as Margaret. Never underestimate the motivating power of pure greed. Margaret's elaborate scheme was extremely expensive and risky, but the potential profits from developing 200 acres of prime real estate made it seem worthwhile to her. Understanding people's true motivations helps you predict their future actions and prepare appropriate defenses. Today, 5 years after our legal victory, the Pinewood Hills Grizzly Sanctuary is genuinely thriving beyond our wildest dreams. We welcome over 10,000 visitors annually, including school groups, scout troops, photography clubs, and wildlife enthusiasts from across the region. Our educational programs have inspired dozens of young people to pursue careers in wildlife conservation and environmental protection. Margaret served her complete sentence and moved away immediately after her release from prison. Her development company declared bankruptcy while paying legal fees and court-ordered settlements to other victims of her fraudulent schemes. She left behind a trail of financial destruction and broken trust that will take years for the community to fully recover from. The HOA elected entirely new leadership and formally apologized for their organization's role in the harassment campaign against our sanctuary. They even donated a substantial amount of money to help construct our new education center as a gesture of goodwill and community healing. Most importantly, our 12 bears are healthy, happy, and secure in their permanent home. We have welcomed 3 new rescues since the trial ended: 2 orphan cubs from a devastating wildfire and an elderly bear from a roadside zoo that was finally shut down by authorities. Kodiak is now 15 years old, which is quite ancient for a grizzly bear, but he remains the undisputed king of his territory. Sometimes I sit quietly by his enclosure in the peaceful evening light, watching him fish contentedly in his pond or nap in the warm afternoon sunshine. He looks completely at peace, secure in knowing that his home will always be protected. That's what our entire struggle was really about, giving these magnificent animals a safe place where they could live out their natural lives with dignity and respect. No golf course, regardless of how profitable it might be, could ever be worth more than preserving that sanctuary. The fake evidence that Margaret created has been permanently deleted from social media platforms and officially debunked in court records that will remain public forever. But the real evidence of our success remains visible every day: 12 healthy, content bears living in a sanctuary that is now legally protected forever through an expanded conservation trust. Sometimes truth takes considerable time and effort to emerge from underneath layers of lies and deception, but it's always worth fighting for with everything you have. These remarkable bears taught me that some things in life are absolutely worth defending, regardless of what lies people might tell about you or what threats they might make. If anyone ever tries to threaten their home again, they will find me ready and waiting with security cameras, comprehensive documentation, and the absolute determination to protect what matters most in this world. The bears are still here, healthy and safe. The sanctuary is still here, better than ever. And I'm still here as their devoted guardian and protector, for as long as they need me to stand watch. That's a solemn promise I intend to keep for the rest of my life.